Good morning, student. Yesterday we did how Dr. Andrew saved the life of Suzanne Morgan. After saving the life of Suzanne Morgan, now Dr. Andrew thought of saving the life of the child. So what he did, he asked the midwife, "Where is the child?" The midwife made a frightened gesture. Gesture means instead of speaking, she had shown with the hand. She had placed it beneath the bed. She had put the child under the bed. In a flash, flash means all of a sudden, Andrew knelt down. He bent down, fishing amongst the sodden newspaper below the bed. He pulled out the child. The nurse, the midwife, thinking that the child was lifeless, dead, she had put the child under the bed in the newspaper. So what he did, fishing means searching among the sodden newspaper. The newspaper had become wet, so it is sodden, damp. Below the bed, he pulled out the child. Means the nurse, the midwife had put the child in the newspaper. A boy. The child was born and his gender was male. He was boy. Perfectly formed. Perfectly formed means he was a complete child. Eyes, nose, hand, lips, everything was there. The limp, warm body was white. The body which should be supposed to be warm was white and soft as tallow. Tallow are the fats. Fat अगर आप चर्बी देखोगे वो white होती है. So the child was like that. It means the child was not having any sign of life. The cord hastily slashed. Cord means the umbilical cord which is attached with the navel of mother to the navel of child. That was hastily means very fastly. It was slash means cut. Lay like a broken stem. The skin was of lovely texture. The skin of the child was very lovely. It's a, you can say, soft, smooth and tender. The head lolled on the thin neck. The neck was very thin and the head was lying on one side of the neck. The limbs seemed boneless. Hands and legs both seemed boneless. Means there was no bones on in that, because what happened? The child was born lifeless. So the child was not showing any movement. His hands, his legs, nothing was showing movement. Is it as if the child was dead? Still kneeling, Andrew stared at the child with a haggard frown. He was still looking at the child, staring completely. His eyes was fixed at the child with a haggard frown. There was an anger on his face. The whiteness meant only one thing. He understood if the child body has turned white, it means only one thing, that is asphyxia. Pallida. Is it clear that the child is not having an oxygen? There is a lack of oxygen in his body and his mind unnaturally tensed. Raised back, he recollected to a case he once had seen in the Samaritan. Means in a place of Samaritan, he went there, and at that time, the same case he had seen where a lifeless thing was brought back into life to the treatment that had been used. Instantly, he was on his feet. The moment he recollected that incident and the treatment which was given at that time, he just stood on his feet and he knew next what he has to do with the child. Get me hot and cold water, he threw out to the nurse. Threw out means he shouted at the nurse to get him hot water and cold water. And a basin too. Basin you must have seen in the washroom, in the kitchen, the basins are there where you, in the kitchen, you clean your dish. In the washroom, you just brush where the basins are there. So he said, I want the basin and I want cold water and a hot water. But doctor, she flattered. But the midwife, the nurse is saying, but the doctor, her eyes on the pallid body of the child. Her eyes was fixed on the lifeless child. And she said, but doctor, means doctor, what you are going to do? The child is dead. Quick, he shouted. Snatching a blanket, he caught hold of a blanket. He laid the child upon it and began his special method of respiration. So he put the child on the blanket and started a special method of respiration. The basin arrived. The ewer is a jug in which you take the water. A big iron kettle. Frantically means like a madman, he splashed, he put cold water into one basin. He put the other hot water. He mixed water as hot as his hand could bear. Then, like a crazy juggler, you must have seen a juggler who played with the balls. Many balls he played. That in the circus also you have seen the juggler playing with many balls, catching the ball one after another. Is it clear? He hurried the child between the two. Now plunging means putting into icy, now into the steaming bath. So what he did, he took two basin. In one he put the cold water, in another basin he put the hot water. And like a juggler, he started dipping the child first into cold water and then into a hot water. Again into the cold water, again into the hot water. He repeated this process for a long time. After 15 minutes passed, sweat was now running into Andrew's eyes, blinding him. Continuously, he was putting or juggling the child first into cold water, then into the hot water, and this he continued for 15 minutes. And sweat could be seen running all over his body, over his face. He could not even see because the sweat has covered his eyes also. One of his sleeves hung down, dripping. One of the shirt sleeves was there inside the water, and the water was falling from his sleeve. His breath came pantingly. He was finding it difficult even to breathe because he was working very fast on the child. But no breath came from the lax body of the child. Though Dr. Andrew was finding it difficult to breathe, he was breathing very fastly, but there was no breath in the lifeless body or in the lifeless child. A desperate sense of defeat pressed on him, a raging hopelessness. After 15 minutes, when he was doing this experiment of putting the child into the cold water, then into the hot water, thinking that there would be certain movement in the child body, but nothing of that sort happened. The child was still lifeless. So he thought that he had failed. He felt the midwife watching him in a stark concentration. Concentration means shock, because she was shocked that what the Dr. Andrew was doing with the child when the child is already dead. While they are pressed back against the wall where she had been all the time remained. Her heart pressed to her throat. She had put her hand on her throat because she could not even scream. She could not even speak. She was horrified looking at the doctor, the way the doctor was putting the child into hot and cold water, uttering no sign, her eyes burning upon him, but she was very angry on doctor, was the old woman. He remembered her longing for a grandchild, but doctor remembered about Suzanne's mother who wanted to see her grandchild. As great as had been her daughter's longing for this child. Why? Because everybody was waiting for this child desperately, because this child was coming after 20 years of their married life. So all dash away now. All their dream has been turned hopeless, futile, failure, beyond remedy. Nobody could console them because they were waiting happily, eagerly for this child who was coming in their life after 20 years. But now everything is silent. The child which had taken birth was lifeless. No word could console the parents. The floor was now a draggled mess. The whole floor was a mess. Why? Stumbling over a soaping towel. Means there was a towel which was lying on the floor. It was completely wet, and you almost dropped the child, which was now wet and slippery in his hand like a strange white fish. There was a towel, the wet towel lying on the floor. There were the basin was there, the jug was there, the kettle was there, everything was lying on the floor. So Andrew, who was carrying the child, the lifeless child, he was about to stumble on the towel, and the child was about to fall. For mercy's sake, doctor, whimpered the midwife. Midwife said in a very low voice, whimpered in a very low voice, mercy, doctor, mercy, the child is stillborn. Please don't play with the child. The child is stillborn. Stillborn and lifeless, there are two differences between it. Lifeless means the child is born, then the child has born, he might be having a life and he had died after that. But stillbirth means, stillborn means the child had already died in the mother's womb. And you did not heed her, and you did not listen to her. Beaten, despairing, having labored in vain for half an hour, having spent half an hour in reviving the child, he still persisted in one last effort. And then he thought of doing, before giving up, he wanted to do a last effort. He wanted to take a last chance. What he did, he started rubbing the child with a rough towel, crushing and releasing the little chest with both his hands. So, what is there? He was just contracting and releasing the little chest of the baby with his both hands, trying to get breath into the limp body, trying to put the breath into that body. So what he was doing, he was continuously rubbing the back of the child with the rough towel. He was crushing the chest of the child with both the hand and then releasing it so that there should be a certain breath into the child. The child could breathe. And then as by miracle, then there was a miracle. The pygmy chest, pygmy is very small. You have must have read in a history book in Africa, there are people, aboriginal people, they are known as pygmies. They are having a very short height, clear, which his hands enclosed. So the chest was completely in the grip of Dr. Andrew, gave a short convulsive heave. So there was a sudden movement in the what body of that child, another. So continuously when the Dr. Andrew was compressing and releasing his chest, compressing and releasing the chest of the child, there was a sudden movement in the body of the child. Andrew turned giddy. Andrew was feeling giddy. Giddiness means he was feeling that he is going to fall down. Chakkar aa rahe, the sense of life springing beneath his finger. He could feel the child was breathing when he was crushing and releasing the chest of the child. He could feel that the child could breathe. It almost made him faint. He redoubled his effort feverishly. So when he felt that the child is breathing, he developed his what? The efforts. Now he was more enthusiastic, though he was dead tired, but still he didn't want to give up. The child was gasping now. The child was finding it difficult to breathe. He wanted to breathe deeper and deeper. The breathing sound was going deeper and deeper. A bubble of mucus came from one nostril. Is it clear? Then suddenly a bubbles of mucus came from one nostril of that child. A joyful iridescent bubble. Though the mucus are not good to look at, but at that time it was a very beautiful mucus because that mucus was showing the child was alive. The child was breathing. The limbs were no longer boneless, means there was a life in the body. The head no longer lay spineless. There was a movement in the head. The blanched skin was totally turning pink. Blanched skin. Blanched means when you roast a brinjal on fire, the skin shriveled up. Sukud jana. Now it was turning pink. Why? Because there was a blood circulation going on inside the body of the child. The child is now getting back to his life. Then exquisitely came the child cry, and all of a sudden the child started to cry. Dear Father in heaven, the nurse sobbed hysterically. Hysterically means uncontrollably the nurse was crying, and then she prayed to God. It's come up alive. She said, thank Father, thank you God that the child is alive. And you handed her the child. He was feeling very weak and dazed. He was feeling even sleepy also. About him, the room lay in a shuddering litter. The whole room was filled. It was very dirty. Shuddering litter means it was dirty. What was lying there in the room? Blankets, towels, basins, soiled instruments. Soiled means the dirty instruments. The hypodermic syringe impaled by its point in the linoleum. Linoleum means an oil, and it has been broken. The ewer knocked down. That ewer, the jug has been knocked down. Oh, it has been turned upside down. The kettle on its side in a puddle of water. The kettle is lying and along surround means there was a puddle of water. Upon the huddled bed, the mother still dreamed her way quietly through the anesthetic. Still, Suzanne was under the influence of anesthesia. The old woman still stood against the wall. The old woman was still shocked what she was going through. But her hands were together, her lips moved without sound. She was praying. The mother of Suzanne was still shocked. She could not move because the thing which she had seen in front of her eyes, but still she was praying, praying for the mother, that is her daughter, praying for her grandchild. Mechanically, Andrew wrung up his sleeve. Wrung means the water was dripping from his sleeve. He just twisted the sleeve to take out that water, pulled on his jacket, wore his jacket. I will fetch my bag later, nurse. He told nurse that later on he will take his bag. He went downstairs through the kitchen into the scullery. Scullery means a room where you can say that utensils are cleaned. His lips were dry. At the scullery, he took a long drink of water. You can say a kitchen. He reached for his hat and coat. He wore his hat and coat. Outside, he found Joe standing on the pavement with a tense, expectant face. Still, Joe had not come to know about his child, and he had even not aware what was going on inside the room of Suzanne. All right, Joe, he said thickly with a heavy voice. Both all right. The child and mothers are all right. It was quite light. It was quite light means the sun has come out nearly 5 o'clock. A few miners were already in the street. Few miners, the people who work in a mine, they were going for their work. The first of the night shift moving out, the people who were working in the mine at night, their night duties, they were coming out. As Andrew walked with them, Andrew was walking with those people who were coming out and going to the mine, spent and slow. His footfall echoing with the others under the morning sky. He was walking along with the footstep of other miners could also be heard. He kept thinking blindly, obviously, of all other work he had done in Balleny. He was thinking about the work which he had done. I have done something. He said, I have done something. Oh God, I have done something real at last. At last, I have done something. Something which you could call it a miracle, something which nobody could have done it before. It's something which is not expected by anyone. I think the chapter is clear to you. Go through the chapter. If you don't understand anything, you can ask me.